And there's more Divine Comedy from Dawn French and her congregation in these BBC videos, available now. A Christmas comedy favourite in 10 minutes here on BBC One, guest stars galore and a play what he wrote. It's vintage, Morecambe and Wise.
An outcast in a brutal world.
Ivanhoe is dead.
I've been living like a leper, accused of treachery to my king.
Down.
You will marry Athelstan! And you will sit at my table tonight!
But not out.
I will not rest nor come back to this house till I have faced the man who has destroyed my honor.
One man's fight for justice in a war against oppression.
You go to risk your life. Beautiful woman. Let go your hold on me, sir.
The truth shall die.
Ivanhoe begins 12th of January on BBC One. He thought he had it all.
Your life as you know it is over.
But on the wrong side of the law.
Your law firm is the sole legal representative of the mob.
He's running scared.
If we run, they find us.
In a deadly game.
You think you're pretty smart, don't you?
Tom Cruise takes on The Firm.
You think it's possible?
Friday at 9:30 on BBC One.
Bringing us up to date with the Christmas Day news now on BBC One, Martin Lewis.
A suicide bomb attack in a German church kills 3 people and injures 13 more. Police hunt for clues to the motive and identity of the woman who blew herself up. The Queen remembers the year's shocking bereavements, but says look forward with courage and optimism. Good evening. German police have spent the day trying to identify the woman who detonated 2 grenades in a church near Frankfurt, killing herself and 2 other women. The midnight church service was crowded with worshippers, and 13 of them were injured.
The powerful explosion hurled wooden pews and shrapnel across the small Protestant church, the blast occurring just a few minutes into the traditional midnight service. Many of the 70-strong congregation ran from the building screaming in panic and covered in blood. The bomber, a woman aged between 30 and 40 years old, was killed as she detonated 2 Eastern European-made hand grenades. They've been hidden beneath her coat. 2 women who'd been sitting beside her also died in the blast. The church's deacon can't understand how anyone could carry out such an attack on one of the holiest days of the year. Berkat Salima says the survivors are shocked. Some have suffered nervous breakdowns. Police have released a photograph of the dead bomber. They hope someone will come forward to identify her. But as the investigation continues, they're still no nearer discovering a motive for the bombing. At churches across the city today, prayers were said for the victims of what seems a senseless attack. A 12-year-old girl is amongst the injured who remain in a critical condition. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Frankfurt.
Rebels holding more than 100 people hostage at the Japanese ambassador's residence in Peru have tonight released a further captive, but there's still no sign of an end to the crisis. The Red Cross says the situation inside the compound remains calm.
8 days under the gun, most of them in appalling conditions, have taken their toll. Some of the hostages are reported to be ill. In the last hour, one, clearly too ill to remain a hostage, was released. He is a Japanese diplomat who emerged, apparently barely conscious, accompanied by the Bishop of Ayacucho, who'd been allowed to spend the day with the hostages. That apart, the stalemate continues. So firm is the deadlock that the arrival of Christmas lunch caused a flurry of excitement and more unrealistic talk of a breakthrough. It was, in fact, a Christmas gesture by the daughter of the president. 10 turkeys and a dozen waiters to serve them. She called forlornly on the hostage-takers to release their captives, then left. Christmas brought little cheer, quite the opposite. The unexpected release of a single hostage, the Uruguayan ambassador, spelt more bad news for President Fujimori. Uruguay had, earlier in the day, released 2 Tupac Amaru guerrillas from jail. The freedom of their man was their reward, a deal struck with the hostage-takers that infuriated Peru's embattled, uncompromising government. It undermines President Fujimori's hardline stand on terrorism by demonstrating that a deal is possible and intensifies further the pressure on him to offer some kind of compromise to break the deadlock. Alan Little, BBC News, Lima.
The Scottish Secretary has asked for a report into another death at Cornton Vale Prison in Stirling. The 22-year-old woman is thought to have taken her own life. 5 other inmates have committed suicide during the last 18 months. Opposition parties say the jail should now be closed.
Yvonne Gilmore was found dead in her cell late last night. The 22-year-old had been serving a 3-month sentence for shoplifting and assault. It's understood she committed suicide. Yet another fatal accident inquiry for Corntonvale Prison. Last month, Scotland's Chief Inspector of Prisons produced a damning report on the jail. At least 3/4 of the women on remand were in need of medical or suicide observation. Drugs were a major problem. Corntonvale's new governor says much improvement's been made over the last few months, but opposition parties are now calling for urgent changes. The Liberal Democrats say the prison should be closed down. The Scottish Secretary, Michael Forsyth, has asked for a full report into the incident and will meet the head of the Scottish Prison Service to discuss the situation at the prison. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
South Wales Police say one of their senior officers is among 7 men who've been arrested as part of an inquiry into allegations of gross indecency at a council-run leisure centre in Aberdare. He's been released on police bail and suspended from duty while the Police Complaints Authority carries out an investigation. The Governor of the Bank of England, Eddie George, has warned that interest rates will have to rise soon if inflation is to be kept under control. In an interview for the French newspaper Le Figaro, Mr. George said that the British economy was showing solid growth, which sooner or later would lead to higher interest rates. He was underlining views expressed in the Bank of England's last quarterly inflation report. The Queen, in her Christmas message, has spoken of the shocking bereavement that has befallen some families this year and of the need to look forward with courage and optimism. The royal family have been celebrating Christmas at Sandringham, where they attended morning service.
At the end of a year which resolved some of the royal family's domestic turmoil with 2 divorces, the Queen appears to be looking to the future. She and her family formed a tight-knit group at church, with neither of her former daughters-in-law present. But all her grandchildren were there, completing the span of 4 generations gathered for their traditional celebration. Her Christmas message, filmed at the weekend at Sandringham, shows her walking in the grounds with her husband. The emphasis is on harmony and informality, the mood relaxed. Suggestions that the Queen would make some reference to the Duke's controversial remarks last week about gun control proved unfounded. But the horror of what happened in Dunblane was clearly on her mind.
Each year brings its share of difficulties for many families. This year has, I know, been no exception. And during it, some have suffered bereavement of a tragic and shocking kind.
She reflects too on some of the great state occasions of the year, including the visit by President Mandela, who she said was an inspiration to everyone working for peace.
That most gracious of men has shown us all how to accept the facts of the past without bitterness, how to see new opportunities as more important than old disputes, and how to look forward with courage and optimism.
Her words carried resonance for her own family, as well as for her broader audience. Jenny Bond, BBC News.
In his traditional blessing in St. Peter's Square, the Pope wished the people of the world happy Christmas in 55 languages. But he spent much of his address highlighting the crisis in Central Africa, which he said was taking place amid the general indifference of the international community. The Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, focused on the needs of the homeless in his Christmas Day sermon at Canterbury Cathedral. He said the number of people sleeping rough was one of the most distressing sights of the late 20th century. It's been a white Christmas for many parts of the country. In London, a light dusting of snow at 5 o'clock this morning was the first for 20 years and cost the bookmakers over £100,000.
A Christmas card seen from London's Hampstead Heath this morning. But for the weather-obsessed British gambler, more crucially it means a long overdue victory against the bookies. Every year without fail, thousands of people bet on a white Christmas. And even though today brought nothing more than a light dusting of snow, the roof of the London Weather Centre provided the all-important evidence.
You have to define it in some way that doesn't leave it open to argument, and this is how the bookmakers have decided to define it.
One snowflake?
One snowflake is enough, yes.
It was in 1970 that London last enjoyed a white Christmas, and though there have been payouts for snow falling on Christmas Day in other parts of the country, one bookmaker alone is facing a bill of at least £100,000, a bill which could rise even further by the end of the day.
Some people take it very seriously. The biggest individual bet we took this year was £3,500.
So somebody's looking forward to a big Christmas payout there?
Not yet, because that one was on Birmingham and not London. So he's still hoping that they're going to snow between now and midnight.
Other hopeful punters can already make a wager at odds of 12 to 1 on a white Christmas next year. John McIntyre, BBC News.
And that's the BBC News tonight. Good night.
Hello and Merry Christmas. Well, as you've just heard, it has been a white Christmas in several places. Newcastle, Manchester, Norwich and the first snow in London for 20 years. Now for tonight, I'm afraid that snow is back up in the far north, particularly over the higher ground, with more cloud and rain pushing its way into the Western Isles as we go through the night. Elsewhere across Britain, it's going to be dry, and the further south you come, fairly clear. But I think really the problems with mist and fog will only be perhaps in Northern Ireland and the far north of England. It will be a cold night, a widespread frost, temperatures as low as -7 in the Highlands of Scotland. Further down towards the south, though, around -2 to -3. As we go through to Boxing Day, the high pressure is still very much in charge of our weather across Britain, but this weather front will be very slowly trying to push into the far northwest. So more in the way of clouds, some rain here as well, particularly for the Western Isles, some snow falling ahead of that, particularly over the higher ground. As we come further south, a dry and a fine day. Now in Scotland, particularly over the mountains, the snow could well cause problems, particularly as you go into the afternoon, so travelling will be quite treacherous on those higher roads. The snow and sleet working its way down into Northern Ireland as well, turning to rain though. All the time, much of England and Wales dry and fine. Those temperatures around 3 to 4 degrees, 1 further to the north, but mild weather in the far north of Scotland. On Friday, the weather front gradually working its way southwards, bringing some cloud and some rain. Bye-bye.
Jack Somersby. Pleased to meet you.
A love beyond reason.
Who is this man sitting in my kitchen?
And a secret beyond belief.
That man is a liar, a thief, and a deserter.
Richard Gere.
Why are you doing this? Because you are not Jack Somersby.
Jodie Foster.
I never loved him the way that I love you.
Somersby.
You are not my husband.
May God strike me dead if I am not.
Boxing Day, 10:15 on BBC1.
A festive Friday evening on BBC1 starts at 6:30 when Jim Davidson and celebrity guests enjoy a seasonal big break. Then at 7...
Mr. Mandarin! What is it? That tonic wine's absolutely marvellous!
The season spirits are running high in Dad's army. And in the Trotter household, the spirit of goodwill lives on.
Isn't it marvellous? Del bites Raquel a coat and you two have a pop at her. I'm sorry, Raquel. I thought it was real. That stimulated first.
At 9:30...
No lawyer has ever left your law firm alive.
Tom Cruise heads a star cast on the run from The Firm. And at midnight...
You know who's happily married, I find? The girl and her mother. That's it.
From the London Palladium, Jackie Mason wraps up Friday night on BBC1.
Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon and Alec Baldwin star in BBC Two's film in just over 5 minutes. Professional pressures prove too much when a sales drive gets out of hand. In Glengarry, Glen Ross. Classic film comedy here on BBC1 at midnight. Peter Sellers leaves a trail of destruction as the bungling Inspector Clouseau in Revenge of the Pink Panther. Before that, no Christmas would be complete without these two.
Good evening, ladies. How it stopped when we came on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Yes. Not only we would like to wish you a good evening, we'd also like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everyone of you.
Merry Christmas.
Lovely, that.
And now, without getting too sentimental...
Oh, yes?
I'd like to wish a very Merry Christmas to my very best friend, my #1 buddy. Merry Christmas, Charlie. Merry Christmas. Hope you're watching the show, Charlie. Merry Christmas. Do you know what I like about Christmas?
Best?
No.
Charlie?
No. What I like best... What I like best about Christmas is everybody gives one another presents.
So I'm told.
They just give one another presents.
I have heard that.
They say, Merry Christmas, old friend, and they swap presents.
So I'm told. It's an old custom, you know.
Yes, it is.
Dating from way back.
Yes.
Like you and me.
It isn't so much the presents, no. It's the feeling of not being forgotten.
Of course.
Especially by an old friend.
Isn't that nice? You see, it's a thought that counts.
Of course.
That's the most important thing.
Yes.
Look at your face.
Look at my face, yeah.
Do you know who you remind me of when you look like that?
Who?
You're the double of Minnie Caldwell. At this moment, you look like Minnie Caldwell in a trouser suit.
You've forgotten, haven't you?
How could I forget you at Christmas?
You've forgotten to get me a Christmas present.
No. I see your lead hanging on that door. I think to myself, it's walkers this afternoon. I'll tell you what.
What?
You're in for a surprise. No, a shock, I would say.
Yeah?
Turn around. No peeping now.
All right.
Close your eyes.
I've closed my eyes.
And I've got for you.
Brown is honour.
Brown is honour?
Yeah.
That's fair enough for me.
Yeah.
Turn around now. Merry Christmas. Old friend. And pal, oh my. What's this? I bought you a pair of socks for Christmas.
But they're still warm.
Ah, yes.
You've just taken those socks off.
I was airing them for you. I don't want you to catch a chill, do I?
What sort of a Christmas present is that?
What are you talking about?
Sake?
It's not what you gave me, isn't it? What do you give me? A quick hello to Charlie, that's all you gave me? Nothing. I know you from the... Well, you want to post it?
It's my Christmas present. From me to you. Merry Christmas, Eric. Something you've always wanted.
Good Lord. Look at that. That is beautiful.
You like it?
Oh, look, I feel terrible about the socks.
Oh, that was the thought that counts.
No, I really
It's not
don't.
about the socks.
Yeah.
Lovely, isn't it?
You can have my shoes. Have my jacket. Have my jacket as well.
I like that tie.
Say no more. Yours, Anne?
Oh, thank you very much.
That is knockout, that.
Yes. It's a musical watch.
A musical watch?
A musical.
Most expensive.
There's lots of things I'd like to say to you. I've wanted to say to you over the years.
Really?
And, well, seeing as it's Christmas...
Yeah?
Look at me when I'm talking to you.
I was then at the time.
Yeah.
I said it earlier, I wasn't then. Sitting in the same place every time, you see. That's the trouble.
I don't want to
I was looking at the watch and I was thrilled with it. Thrilled I am.
I don't want to sound too sentimental.
Too sentimental?
No. But that's a musical watch.
Yes, I know that.
And the tune that watch plays says it all for me.
Really?
Open up the back.